The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone Marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle. Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 121, and our guest is Colin Halliburton. Colin is the lead singer and principal songwriter for the Kansas-based band The Roseline. In the fall of 2022, The Roseline released 2 wonderful singles, Hot Dice and Saber Rattlers. Their latest full-length record, Constancy, was one of my favorite albums of 2021, and it remains a go-to record whenever an open road presents itself. We caught up with Colin via Zoom recently for a wide-ranging conversation about the fortuitous way his music came into my life, the magic of melody, the Roseline's excellent new releases, and so much more. Colin was an absolute delight, and it is my great pleasure to bring you my conversation with Colin Halliburton.
Levels rise. Ain't got no home to inherit. Yeah, I can murder the mood in seconds if you want me to. Breaking bread with my family. Salty air is just a rustle.
Man, I'm just so excited to talk to you. I don't know if I've ever told you how I got into your music, but I think for folks listening, it's fun to hear, you know, especially as Twitter falls off into the ocean or whatever is happening to it at the moment. I went to see Austin Lucas and Matt Woods play right before your record Constancy came out, and I locked myself out of my house, and I left the keys in the Uber, and so I'm waiting for the Uber to come back and bring me my keys, and so I just put out on Twitter like, you know, what's everybody doing? I got nothing to do. Anybody want to talk or ask questions or whatever? And Craig from All Knowing McGill threw throughout this conversation, hey, you got to check out the Roseline. There's this new record coming out. Check it out. And so I listened to a couple of singles and was floored, pre-ordered the record. And it's just been one of the things I've listened to the most since its release. And so I'm just so excited to dive in, man, because I've spent so much time with your music over the last year and a half or so.
Sweet. That's awesome. That's
yeah. It is awesome. And it's like one of those, you know, you've been making records for a long time, and it's just hard to get through all the noise. I mean, this is music made for me, you know, like this music hits me so hard. And for whatever reason, you didn't come across my radar for so long. I'm so glad you did eventually. And I'm so glad we get to talk about it. I want to talk about that record. I want to talk about your wonderful new singles. I want to talk about just creativity in general and get down with you. But I want to start with my favorite song of yours, which is Hunker Down, which feels like it just sort of opened my brain and sort of like took out all of my thoughts and put them into this gorgeous song. Like there's so many lines from it, you know, and there's so many lines from that whole record that I'm careful with my words right now, because I don't want it to sound like Joe Rogan or men's rightsy or something when I say this, because it's like it gets to the 30s 40 something male condition in such a way, you know. Fuck Joe Rogan, for the record. The Marinade does not support Joe Rogan or his bigotry. But you know, we still have feelings and we have thoughts, and there's so much in that song and that whole record that really speaks to me. And I wonder if you could talk about that particular song and if you remember how it came together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just grappling with the idea of growing up and settling down, and what once was you know, entertaining and my way of life was no longer that appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like at its core, it's essentially just a song about like I would rather hang out with my family at home than like go party, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much how it came about,
Well,
lyrically at least, yeah.
well, there's so many lines that again I can, I connect with in all, and that is true for all of your music. The way that you write in a very clear way. And what I mean by that is like you are there's an economy to your words. It is very at least to me, what you're trying to say comes through very clearly, even if it's not necessarily topical. It's clear, and you have this wonderful way with language, and I wonder where that comes from. And kind of piggybacking on that, sort of where lines like on Saber Rattlers that's coming out soon, your forthcoming single, all these saber rattling racist frat boy cop cucks in control, like there's alliteration in there. There's like, it's such an evocative imagery to that, and there's like, where do these lines come from for you, and what does that process look like?
I don't know. I mean, I think like my process for writing songs has pretty much been the same like since I started, which is it's really simple and pretty boring and it's just like stumble upon a chord progression I kind of like. I sing a melody um which is just very like uh I don't know, like impulsive, or like the first thing that pops out, the melody. I kind of add the you know, get the meter down, get the phrasing down, like syllabically how I want to fit the line in, and I'm just singing gibberish.
Mm.
And then I kind of fill in the words to match that that phrasing or that meter. But yeah, the two like probably most mysterious things, for me in songwriting is like melody and just where the lyrics come from.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, like once I figure out the phrasing and the meter, it comes fairly easily.
Can we unpack that melody question a little bit? Because I don't know if I've ever really asked somebody to dive into melody and where it comes from. Because I totally agree that it's mysterious. And for me, as someone who writes songs as a hobby, lyrics are always there. And for me, that's because I'm constantly writing, I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly consuming words. And so, and I feel like I have a lot to say. Whether that's true or not is debatable, but I feel like I have a lot to say. And so the words are always there, and it is less mysterious to me, because whatever writing I'm doing, I'm writing about what I'm feeling, what matters to me, what I think I need to say. Whereas melody is mystical to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. And I wonder if we could dive in a little bit, like, how do we get to that place? Like, because these melodies are infectious on all of your songs. So how do you get to that place where melody is coming to you?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for it. It remains a mystery to me, kind of, but it's kind of the most effortless thing for me in the whole process for whatever reason. I don't know if it's like, what I grew up listening to or what I was exposed to, or I have no idea, but yeah, as soon as I get I mean, you give me two chords or whatever, three chords, um almost instantaneously I have a melody to go with it. And it is just like pretty abstract, like um and mysterious. But yeah, I don't know.
So
Just
how early were melodies coming to you? Like how far back can you trace that in your life?
oh, man, I don't know. I mean, I was really young. I had always like really liked singing. Um
Mm.
like way before I ever picked up a guitar, which I did pretty late in life anyway. Um but yeah, I was always singing like while mowing the lawn or like in the
Mm-hmm.
shower or in the car, wherever. Um but yeah, I was always just making up songs and lines, and I just liked the like physical act of singing, kind of, for whatever reason. I don't know if I was like good at it, but I always liked singing. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned those particular tasks, and that this has come up before on the show, but maybe not in this way. The shower, driving. So many songwriters say songs come to them when they're driving. Corey Brandon, just the other day, I talked to him, and he mentioned a song coming to him while driving. Mowing the lawn has not come up, but dude, I can relate to that. Just ideas in general coming. I love mowing the lawn for that reason.
I do
This,
too.
like, you know what I mean? It's like this.
Yeah.
I feel like those tasks are so automatic. Driving
Yeah.
shouldn't be. We should pay more attention than we
Right.
do. But those tasks are just so rote almost. Like I'm gonna
Mhm.
this. I'd wash my body the same way every day. When
Yeah.
I'm cutting the grass, I'd have the same pattern at cutting the grass. So it's like my brain is sort of occupied, but at the same time, I've got room, sort of creative room in my brain, and things come up that way. That's maybe there's a bit of an answer to our question about melody.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think if you have that sort of just rote activity to do to give yourself some space, um that may open up some part of your brain or something that can access those melodies better.
You've been kind of what I would say is prolific in the last few years. You had Constancy, and then just what, like the year before Good Grief comes out, right?
Mhm.
And so it feels like there a momentum to you, and do you write like following a momentum?
It sure doesn't feel that way at the moment, to be totally honest. I think with Good Grief, there was a momentum because there was kind of an urgency behind it. Well, there were two things. I was My wife and I were expecting our first kid. And so I knew I wanted to get some stuff done before she arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was obviously the pandemic and lockdown. So I had the time too. And I did kind of create somewhat of a work ethic for that, where I would go down in our basement pretty much every night for a couple hours, and just play guitar and see if anything came from it, and I found like the more you do that, just with no expectations, like the more material you're gonna manifest. And then so with Constancy, uh obviously our daughter was already here. And then and I've heard, songwriters talk about this before too, maybe even on your podcast, but like when you have a kid, those free moments become like even that much more precious for, creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's like 20 minutes here or there, whatever, you kind of like really get in the zone and try to pack it in, just because there is that urgency to it. So yeah, I think that's why those two records kind of came together fairly quickly.
They feel, and maybe it's just a product of all of that was happening, because they feel like almost like companions, those two records, as I listen to them.
Yeah. And I think part of that probably is that we recorded it, same studio, same engineer, mixing and everything. So sonically they're fairly similar. I think we took a few more like quote risks on Constancy, but Good Grief seems fairly straightforward. Just like folk rock, alt country record. But yeah.
I think that it's you brought up genre, so I'll go there. I think that I was listening to your records and preparing for this conversation and trying to think about, like, we as music journalists always have to compare it to something and have to fit it somewhere. And I try not to do that kind of thing as much as I can. I try to find other things to compare. But I was like, there's like a vibe more than anything to your music that I couldn't put my finger on it. Searching and searching, like, what is it? Why do I connect with it so much? And I wish there was like a counting wallflowers or like wallflower crows, like this counting crows wallflowers kind of genre that we had a word for, because it's like that, I think, is where, because I was listening to Constancy a lot while I also had rediscovered the wallflowers bringing down the horse, and they just felt like these belong together for whatever reason. It's not the same thing. And you write differently than Jakob Dylan does, significantly different, I think, than he does. But still, there's a vibe to those bands that the Roseline feels like it should fall, like you should just fall right in there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I like that. Totally. I mean, I haven't listened to the Wallflowers in decades probably, but I mean, it's not like cool or hip to admit, but me and a couple of my friends definitely like still stand by the first 3 Counting Crows records pretty strongly.
Yeah.
Like, those are fucking great albums.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's becoming cooler. I think as we get into the age where we're having more influence over the cultural conversation, I feel like at this point we're dictating a lot of those conversations, and I feel like it's cooler now to admit that you loved Counting Crows, because they're great fucking songs, and I don't know where they ended up becoming not cool. When you listen to those first couple of records, it's like, this is undeniably great. I don't care what kind of music you like. I don't care what you're into art-wise. These are undeniably great records.
Totally. I agree. But I think there's probably a few people that disagree.
Fuck those people.
Yeah.
Just kidding, folks. If you don't like, no, you know what? No, fuck you. If you don't like Counting Crows. Let's get into the new singles, man. Both just great songs. Again, songs that feel like they belong together and feel like they're maybe companions in some way. Are they intentionally? And can you talk about how each song came together?
Yeah. They do feel kind of like companions to me, but that wasn't intentional. I just realized that after the fact. But yeah, Hot Dice. God, where to start with that? I mean, essentially, it's like a song about learning when it's like learning when to like shut up, basically. Like I think I have had the tendency, like maybe a couple years ago, to just bring up like polarizing political shit at like family dinners, or like it just kind of ruined joyful moments with like stuff that I knew would ruffle feathers or piss people off. And as I got older and just realized how like ineffective that was, like I was kind of like, well, what's the point really? Like, I'm not gonna like, radicalize my like cousins on vacation while we're like having dinner like by a beach.
Yeah. Dude, I
Uh,
had a, sorry to interrupt, but I had just a moment the other day that I think you will relate exactly to this, which is, and I think that's why these songs, I connect with them so much, because I deal with this shit all the time, right? Like I'm constantly talking about it. But the other day, I went to watch the US England soccer game, that World Cup game. And my local bar was open for it, and it's a great place because it is the type of place where there'll be like someone who's an avowed Marxist sitting next to someone with like a DeSantis 2024 2028 sticker, and the political discussions happen in there, the debates happen, sometimes it gets messy, but for the most part people are really civil, and we just watch football and drink beers. It's kind of a beautiful place, right, in that way. So I'm going to this game, right, and I'm not very patriotic. I mean, I'm like a lot of folks, sort of liberals who really get fired up about the Olympics and turn all nationalists for the Olympics or for a soccer game, and then immediately I go back to like not wearing red, white, and blue, like even
right,
on accident. So anyway, I don't
right.
have anything with like American flags on it or anything. I have one
Yeah.
Pearl Snap shirt that Van Plating gave me that's badass. It has an eagle and a flag on it, but that didn't seem appropriate for this game. So but I have an Immigrants Make America Great shirt. It looks like a MAGA shirt, but it says Immigrants Make America Great, and it's red. And I had a blue hat, and I was like, had it on, and I was like, you know what? It's not like a real strong statement, but I'm making a statement, and I feel like it's going to be the right move, here. And right before I got out the door, I was like, dude, you're just going to watch a soccer game. Like you don't have to make a fucking statement. Like you can just
Right.
USA chant right now, and everybody's gonna
Yeah.
have fun. And so I
Yeah.
changed shirts, and I'm glad I did, because everybody just had a fucking blast, and
Yeah.
there was no reason for me to like make somebody's blood pressure go up because they saw my shirt,
Totally. Yeah. That is a perfect analogy to what Hot Dice is kind of about. Um, and then Saber Rattlers was kind of similar idea where, the narrator, or who, I guess it's me, in the song, um, starts the whole song starts with this pretty bold line, like almost like a punk rock line or something. It's all this like virtue signaling, kind of self-righteous stuff. But like in the process, I realized like, you can act like you're this virtuous, righteous dude, but if you're not like, being a good husband or dad or partner, it's kind of like defeats the purpose,
Sure.
or critical.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like the, political climate and Twitter doom scrolling would just like put me in a shitty mood, and I would find myself sort of taking it out on the people around me and the people I love, and that's just um no way to behave really.
It's such a constant struggle because like I think it's beautiful that what you're saying and the conclusions you're coming to, but it's also like, Ron DeSantis is a real threat to democracy. Like we're talking about things that are important, But balancing being concerned about that and in the right way speaking on it and speaking out against it, it is a tough balance, because there is a need to say something and there's a need to do things. But at the same time, like you said, it's a hell of a mature realization that you had where you went, wait a minute, I'm taking this out on people I love,
Right.
things that I have very little control over too, yes, I should speak on them. Yes, they should upset me. That's normal. But that balance is really tough.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's just about learning how to compartmentalize that and not let it bleed into, the parts of your life where you need to be really like gentle and compassionate and loving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also there's a little bit of an element of I'm hearing you say, and also as I listen to the song, there's an element of like not wanting to being careful about being judgmental. Like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day, like how we have, and I'm not sure if I've spoken about it on the show, but we'll go with it. How if I see an American flag sticker now, my brain immediately goes, well, there's a racist, which is, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not true, right?
Yeah.
It might be
Yeah.
true, but that's
Yeah.
not true. And that's a bad headspace for me to be in, that my brain immediately does that, but it does. And
Totally.
so I have to be really careful about judging people because I know that I immediately make a judgment about that person. If I see an American flag and a cross, I'm like, well, there's a bigot. But
Yeah.
that's not fair because that person, and I had a situation last summer that I was making a comment, making a judgment about somebody, judging them similarly. And my buddy at that same bar, my buddy was like, you don't know that guy yet. And so I was like, you're right. You're right. And so then I got to know the guy and of course I was totally wrong. Right. I was like,
Yeah.
I was
Right.
completely wrong. He was a very, very reasonable person, mostly apolitical, had nuanced thoughts about the world. And I just felt like such a dick, but it's an important lesson because that judgment can creep in. And a song like Saber Rattlers is really helpful to process not being judgmental and not rushing to those conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it just comes with age. Being able to not immediately judge, the American flag dudes is like exactly what you said.
Yeah. And that's a
But
hard one. That's a hard one because it's like, because to me, the American flag dudes, in my life at least, I've only recognized them as someone I'm going to stereotype post Trump. Now I'm learning now more and more. I'm coming to grips with the fact that shit was all laying there under the surface, and then he became the conduit through which it became mainstream. And so like that's just a hard thing for me because of some of the people that I've loved and spent time with, some of the music that I've listened to. Like I'm starting to come to grips with bands that I really loved and spent time with that now I look back and listen to the songs and I'm like, oh shit, dude, you should have known that guy was a bigot.
no.
And it's like,
Yeah.
oh shit. I love that song and I love that song. And then I listen back to the lyrics and I go, oh, motherfucker. I just did not see that. That's not how my brain was processing it.
Yeah.
Or I was, growing up in a conservative environment. And so like, I didn't seem that way. And it takes getting out of that environment, whether it's physically, like in my case, or mentally, to be able to separate yourself from those influences so you can kind of see things more objectively. But it's a tough realization, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, the other thing I wanted to mention with Saber Rattlers is it's it was a big collaboration between me and our guitar player Bradley, to where he wrote the music, like that riff that opens the song. He came up with like at a sound check when we were on tour in Sweden. And we both kind of like looked at each other and was like, that was pretty dope.
Cool.
And so he just did a voice memo of it, right there. I totally forgot about it. Get back home from tour. He's fleshed out, the full song, the full chord progression, and sent it to me. And then I wrote the lyrics and melody over that. So that was kind of a unique way of creating a song that is pretty atypical for us. But I thought
I was going to ask you about that because it seems like you do a lot of writing on your own. Is that true?
Yeah. I'd say the majority of the songs are written by me, just on an acoustic guitar. But yeah, it's fun when someone like Brad can something as simple as like just teaching me a new chord or something, or different voicing. It really kind of opens up my I don't know, like sense of melody and just how a song can be structured. Because I just got so used to like relying on the same like 5 chords I've always played. And there is, that kind of romantic like notion of 3 chords and the truth or whatever, but it's okay to like throw in some like more elegant chord voicings every now and again. Like it's not going to hurt anybody.
That's great. What a sort of sounds like almost accidental awakening in that way, just what a beautiful organic way to come to that place.
Yeah. It was really cool to see that through, just from its infancy as a riff to like a full song was fun.
That's beautiful. You're a big Kansas Jayhawks basketball fan, and I'm always jealous when you post pictures from there. I've never been, and I'd like to go. I grew up a Kentucky fan, so like Kansas, UCLA, Duke, Kentucky. It's not like those are these. I've been to Cameron Indoor and I've been to Rupp, but like it feels like there's that Rushmore of arenas. If you could even call it an arena. How big is, now that I say that, how big is Allen Fieldhouse?
I don't know. It doesn't feel that big.
Yeah, because Cameron's tiny. Cameron is like really tiny.
Right. I don't know the actual capacity of it, but
seems like a magical place regardless.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the loudest places you could be, I think.
That's awesome. So who are the most creative Kansas basketball players of all time?
Most creative. Oh man. Gosh, that's a good question. Man. Maybe like Keith Langford.
Okay.
Mario Chalmers.
Okay. All right.
Right.
I feel like Paul Pierce is the first one that came to mind for me.
Paul Pierce, yeah.
I feel like he was just so unique in the way that he played. It almost looked like he wasn't good at basketball, even though that obviously he was incredible. He was just so weird in the way that he moved and so different and interesting.
Totally. Yeah.
You watch Paul Pierce and you like look up. I love players like that. Like one time I saw Tim Duncan play and I looked up at the scoreboard and he had 50 points. And I was like, bullshit.
Right.
I feel like he's had 3 field goal attempts and he's got 50 points. And it was like the third quarter.
Just quietly scoring 50 points.
Yeah.
Paul Pierce, we're about the same age, I think. So he's
45.
Okay. So he was probably a senior when I started, but I don't know.
Okay.
I just remember seeing him in like the, cafeteria and shit and just being starstruck.
That's fun. Yeah, I was just talking to Garrett Capps about how I had Tai Chi class with Matt Bonner.
Oh, nice.
when I was at Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like get starstruck or anything or like fawn over celebs, but if I see a Jayhawk basketball player like around town or on campus or whatever, I don't know what it is, but I'm like,
That's
oh,
funny. Yeah, celebrity's funny like that, man. Like I agree. I don't usually get starstruck, and I get to talk to a lot of my heroes, you know.
Right.
So I can't really be starstruck. I can show my enthusiasm, and I do. But if I was starstruck, it would ruin the show. But the only time I can think of that I was truly starstruck was when I met the Macho Man Randy Savage. That's the only time I can think of that I was just like, I couldn't get my words out, you know.
That's amazing.
And he couldn't have been cooler, you know, and he was just real patient with me, and it couldn't have been cooler. We just got a few more minutes left, and then at the end, if we could just restart this, because the free version of Zoom is about to time us out. But if we could restart it and do that thing we talked about earlier, the Patreon exclusive kind of concept, that'd be awesome.
Sure.
What are you getting down on? What art has you inspired at the moment? What are you listening to? Maybe a book you're reading, TV show?
Yeah, shoot. What am I listening to? I've been listening to the new Wild Pink record a lot. What else? The new Courtney Marie Andrews record is really beautiful. And I'm reading what am I reading? I'm reading a book by Thomas Frank called The People Know. The People, N-O.
Okay.
Which is like kind of the history of populist movement in America and how that term has been like completely misrepresented lately by pundits and like people. Everyone was calling Trump a populist, and like he's like so far from the origins of populism, which was like a real lefty movement like in the late 1800s, started in Kansas by like farmers essentially. But it's really interesting, and he's just a great writer and funny and just trashes the elites on both sides of the aisle, and
Nice.
It's just right up my alley.
Dude, I have to check that out. Yeah, that sounds right up my alley too. I'm gonna have to check that out. Colin, this has been such a pleasure, man. Your 2 new singles are amazing. Hot Dice is out. They'll both be out by the time I release this, so folks can check them out. And I'm just so grateful for your time, man. I mean, again, your music has been such a soundtrack for my life, especially on drives where I'm going to see, but both my parents are ailing. And that record has been such a companion for me as I'm looking back on my life and the decisions I made, and the times I was flirting with service industry women and all the things that you sing about, right? All those things have been a part of my life, and I'm reflecting on them as I approach 42. And so I'm really just so grateful for the music that you make, and so grateful for your time right now.
And thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I definitely have listened to my fair share of Marinade episodes. So
that means a lot to me, man. Thank you. That it always hits a little different when songwriters say they listen. Because hopefully you're grabbing a nugget here or there from the amazing people I've been fortunate enough to listen to. So thank you so much for that too.
Totally.
Your cousins look kind of confused. Where's the love or compassion? You involuntary celibate fascist. What did your daddy do to you? Unpack your trauma for the truth. Oh, man, we had a real good time. Can't barely get out of bed. Hollowed out about a case
Colin Halliburton, y'all. Thank you so much, Colin. Thank all of you for listening. RoselineMusic.com for all things the Roseline. Grab physical copies of their wonderful records. Keep an eye on tour dates. And be sure to spin those wonderful new singles. The song you are hearing in this episode is one of those tunes. It's called Hot Dice. MarinadePodcast.com for all things the Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and more. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're especially active on Twitter. Subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support the work we're doing as the Marinade. Y'all, we have had such an amazing run lately. The feedback on our episode with Hayes Carl has been outstanding. Thank you so much for that. We have Langhorne Slim recorded and ready to come your way, as well as a very special surprise that I can't say too much about just yet. Thank you so much for supporting this Marinade thing. We just covered Orange Blossom Review Festival in Lake Wales, Florida earlier this month. And Jen Ross has some incredible photos that she took there. And then I have a written piece that is almost finished that will probably be released by the time you're hearing this episode. So marinadepodcast.com for all of that. I want to take a second to show some love for Glenn and Andrew at the Raised by Whoops fake radio show. Glenn reached out and invited me to record an episode of their podcast earlier this month. And you can hear that conversation now. Head over to raisedbywhoops.com or search Raised by Whoops on your podcast app to hear our talk. Glenn is a thoughtful interviewer, and I'm grateful for his time and interest in me and the Marinade. It's a wide-ranging conversation about my life and work, and we cover ground I haven't traversed on the show or even on the Marinade's Patreon. So check that out, Raised by Whoops, if you're interested. Speaking of the Patreon, if you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community. For just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to Patreon-exclusive content, like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. Just recently, I posted a piece of my conversation with Colin where I asked him some silly questions, like his favorite color, his favorite food, that sort of stuff. It was a lot of fun, something different from what we would normally do for the Marinade proper, and that's kind of what the Patreon is for. I post what I'm getting down on. That's an examination of the art that is inspiring me at the moment. Sometimes we get together for Patreon happy hours, which we're overdue for at this moment. So I'm going to take this as inspiration to schedule one of those, because they're a lot of fun to be able to connect with folks who are marinators from across the country. And it's just a really great way to connect with people who have similar interests and similar worldviews. And I'm just thankful so much for the Patreon community. It's at patreon.com/Marinade Podcast. If you're interested and can swing it. If you want to support the show financially, but you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription, I totally get that. We have Venmo and PayPal, and we appreciate it. If you just want to give us a tip, it's just at the Marinade. You can find us over on those channels, and the money goes right back into the making of the show. Right now, that means saving up to cover some festivals. We've been invited to some very cool events, Jen and I have, and we need to figure out how to pay for those experiences. And so the Patreon's great for that. Any little tips you can give us are great for that. We appreciate it. But above all, this is a free show, and we're thankful that you listen and you spread the word about the Marinade. Until next time, go out and create something in 2023. Cheers, y'all.